Hello, everybody, and welcome to I don't know what number episode. I'm batch recording, so let's say episode 65. I don't know of the Hallway Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, a very hungover man that genetics forgot, Rian, and I have a very special guest with me today. I am very lucky to be able to speak to the a guy that I've been a fan of for a long time. His interviews are fantastic. Um he is a writer and interviewer for WrestleTalk and Fightful Select as of recently, and the most important thing, and I made sure not to forget this. He's the reigning, defending Quizlemania champion of the world. It's Louis Dangoor. How are you?
I'm doing all right, mate. I'm doing all right. It's still weird when people, to me, say that they're fans of my work. I'm still relatively new to this. Or I know I work for a sort of a big company, but this whole thing is still relatively new. So I do really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm doing all right. I am. We were talking earlier about the football. I'm looking forward to a few good games that are going to be on today.
Yeah, but yeah, as you said, like you're surprised, and but now, like you've been knocking out some good work for a long time, and it must be weird to like sit back and just realize that, like when you just, I don't know, for want of a better term, smell the roses. You're like, yeah, I'm actually doing some. How does it feel when people, as you said, does it still feel weird when people come out and be like they're fans of your work, because you're obviously still telling people that you're fans of their
Yeah,
work as well.
that's the thing. It's like. It's not so much like I don't feel I've earned it because I know like I've worked hard, but it's when so I know people on Twitter sometimes do these sort of like threads of people whose work you should follow, and it's when they put me in the same bracket as guys like Gary Cassidy or Alex McCarthy or Sean Rossap, and it's like, am I at that level? It's sometimes one of those when I have to pinch myself and be like, oh damn, like maybe I am at this level um now. So yeah, I mean I'm enjoying doing what I'm doing. It's good fun. That's the main thing. I think if you're gonna make a go of something and make a crack of it, you've got to have fun while you're doing it. And I've got to say, I am enjoying what I'm doing at the moment with obviously WrestleTalk.
Yeah, that's it. Like the expression is like do something you love and you won't work a day in your life. It's
Yeah.
pretty true. But you're also studying in uni. So how's that? How are you balancing doing your work and studying in college? Because I'm doing the same, but not to nowhere near the extent of obviously. But how's that? How has that been, or is that only starting now?
So I've worked for WrestleTalk for gosh, when was it? January 2019 I started. So over 18 months now, and along the reason I started was out of not boredom, but at university I only had 9 hours a week, so I was going insane with like boredom.
Mm,
So I was like, right, what do I enjoy doing? I was like, right, I love wrestling. Let's see what there is. I originally wanted to go into football, like football writing, because
mm.
football's been my passion for years. So I had a look online, and there wasn't really anything that interested me, or it was hard to get into. And I mean, as you know, unless you're a former player, it's very hard to get into like writing about football.
Oh yeah. There's some very washed up journalists. We're not getting into it, but there's some journalists that just shouldn't be on TV anymore. But you got the accreditation, so that's it.
Yeah, as you say, stuff like that. So it's when you go into, I guess, writing about football. It's a hard place to get into. So I was all right. I enjoy wrestling. Let's see if there's any wrestling places. And I've been a fan of Wrestle Talk myself for years. I'd followed their work. I'd listened to their podcasts, and I was like everyone else, a fan of the channel. So when I spoke to some people who work there, and I was like, "Hey, listen, like fan of you guys' work. Any chance you've got any sort of like writing roles going?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure. Send us some examples of your work, and we'll check it out." And I was like, "All right, I don't have any examples of my work, so I had to go through, write some stuff, and it was actually a lot of good fun writing for wrestling, getting to start out. So for me, it was interesting getting started, learning how to cope, and that was the main thing of being like, all right, I've got this assignment due, I need to balance my time. But now with everything going online, I do have genuinely more time to do work for the website and for my exclusives and interviews, and that has been sort of the silver lining of this whole thing. I know this pandemic's been awful, for a lot of people, and it's not been easy for myself included. But it has meant that I've been able to focus a lot of time on work, which is something that I do sort of feel very appreciative for.
Yeah, and then obviously, like to further your, obviously you have these moments where you realize that you're actually doing a good job, and then Sean Ross Sapp Fightful asked you to come on board. How did that come about, and how did that feel? That must have been. I'm not. You probably back yourself. It mustn't have been. It wouldn't have been surprising, but it must have just felt like vindication of your good hard work.
So it was, yeah, I spoke to Sean. I can't remember when it was. So I was going to do the Backlash post show review with him. And it went well. We had a good chat and during the interview, so during the show, and it was good fun. And Sean's a great guy. He's someone that I have looked up to for years. He's fantastic at what he does. So I said to him, "Listen, have you got any roles sort of going?" And he was like, "Yeah, yeah. What do you feel about doing the NXT and AEW review?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. That sounds great." And that's immediately after NXT and AEW. So the shows end here at about 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So that would be about 3:15 to 4ish, 4:15, and that was quite a lot. That was because obviously with uni, that was one of the things you mentioned earlier. How my man doing all this all with uni, that was one of the things I scaled back on that just because with my uni work, it wasn't working out in terms of doing the those reviews and then being up early for lectures on the following day. Just it wasn't working out. So I said to do you want to say, have you got anything else like any other roles on screen? And he was like, would you like to do a retro review? I was like, yeah, that works well. And I think that because obviously I'm 20, so we review a show that took place 20 years. The first one was SummerSlam 2000, which took place on the day I was born, actually. So I review it with Alex McCarthy, and I like the dynamic of I wasn't watching at the time, but he was. So a lot of the stuff I'm like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. He's like, no, because obviously he was watching at the time. He feels slightly more nostalgic for. Um. So yeah, it's good fun working for Sean, and as you say, he was very receptive of me, which made me obviously realise sort of another way of him going, right, you're doing good work. And it was me thinking, damn, I'm obviously making a name for myself enough that people are willing to have me on their platforms and support my work, which is the main thing.
Yeah, no, you mentioned NXT there, and just to sidetrack for a second, but like this tomorrow, I think it is, yeah, it's Saturday. Tomorrow we're getting Kyle O'Reilly versus Finn Balor, and I saw you tweeted that you were excited, and fans of the podcast know that I'm a big Kyle O'Reilly fan, and my co-host Kieran is a Finn Balor stan, and this match has the potential to be match of the year, and I was wondering what your thoughts were on that match turn up tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It should be good. Like you guys, I'm a massive Kyle O'Reilly fan. I think he's awesome, and I also think Finn's awesome. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's a match we haven't seen before, which is exciting. It should be a great show. I mean, on paper, it has one of the potential to be one of the best in-ring NXT shows for quite some time, and that's saying something because their shows are always awesome. So
Yeah.
yeah, it should be good.
Yeah, it's nice to. I know that the term throwaway takeover has been kind of thrown around, but I don't think we would have got Kyle and Finn if it hadn't been thrown together. I think they would. That's probably looking too much into it, but I don't. Kyle probably wouldn't have got the chance, and now hopefully people open their eyes and he gets a huge singles push, even with the North American belt, because he is probably like pure in ring work, probably the top three in the world right now in terms of just pure in ring work, and he's starting to develop that character. But so what has been your favorite moment while working for either company? What has there been anything that like stood out where you're like, wow, this is pretty cool?
Yeah, getting to interview Ric Flair. I always say that one. That was still to this day one of the most surreal moments of my life. Was like you send off emails to people and you see what happens. You often don't get responses, or you get sort of like, oh no, it's all right. So when obviously I sent an email off to Rick's management team, I was not expecting a response, and I got one, and they were like, yeah, let's make it work. So a funny story on that interview was it was actually my mum's birthday, and we were supposed to all go out for lunch, and I was like, listen, mum, like anyone else, I'd probably say no, but like this is Ric Flair, And she was like, right, who is this guy? I'm like,
Yeah.
right. I'm like, Ric Flair. And she's like, okay, I know who he is. So that's like proof enough that he's a big enough name, if that makes sense. They're like, all
Yeah.
right, he's obviously a very big name if I know who he is. So that was good, and it was just awesome to interview him. To and I think if most people said, "Oh, he's my favorite wrestler of all time," you wouldn't bat an eyelid. So to be able to get the chance just to interview him, he's such an interesting character, and that was incredible for me. It's still one of those moments where, even when I look back on the video or just rewatch it, it's still one of those moments where I sometimes have to pinch myself and be like, "Shit, I got to interview one of the best wrestlers of all time." So yeah, it's still surreal, and that is one of those moments where I'm still like, damn, I've clearly done good enough work.
Yeah, no, that like one of my questions was I was probably expecting Ric Flair there, but like when you like pressed as I did like press the call button to call anybody for an interview, when he answered the thing, and I'm assuming he came on with a big grin and
Yeah,
like a big introduction. That must have just been like wow.
it
As
exactly that. Exactly, it's when I it didn't really sink in until I was there and in the interview, and I don't get nervous before interviews. Like when I started, I did, but now I don't really get worked up about interviews or panicked about who I'm speaking to. So when I was then sat on Zoom with him, that was the one where I was like, oh damn, like I've got to prepare for this like big time. And it was like more than anything, it was an honor to get to interview him.
yeah,
He is a legend of the business, and when I set out to do this, I didn't ever think I'd be in a position where I'm speaking to people like him. So to get to do that was surreal. And yeah, I think it was just it was nice to see that he obviously, because I sent him and his people examples of my work, so they obviously were fond enough of the work I was doing
yeah, it's
to
vindication for you again.
exactly to give it a go. And I was like, okay, if they obviously feel strongly enough and think that I'm putting in good work, then yeah, let's do it. And it was honestly still one of those moments where you sort of pinch yourself and you're like, damn, I'm doing good work. So no,
Yeah,
that was good to see.
yeah. Raven was another one as well that I really was it Raven you interviewed as well that
I haven't interviewed Raven. To be fair, I have actually wanted to interview Raven for some time,
yeah,
but
no,
I haven't interviewed
I think I got my wires crossed. But speaking of that, it's like someone you would have been like surprised in a good way or surprised in any way of like how they.
That's a
It's
good question.
it's yeah, it's very hard to word that because obviously no negativity whatsoever. But like it's like how you were surprised, like how nice they were, what they were like, your perceptions versus what they were.
So actually, when I interviewed Brody Lee, he was a great guy, and I didn't expect him, and not in a bad way. I just
Hmm.
didn't expect him to be as nice as he was, especially on TV. We see him play like a proper despicable heel. So in person, when he was so nice, it was a bit like, oh damn, like you are actually just a very very nice guy. Which was nice to see because he is, and I still put my hand on heart. He's probably the nicest person I've ever interviewed. And the thing people don't understand about interviews is I try to make mine like a conversation with a friend,
Exactly. Yeah.
so people don't get overwhelmed when they listen to it or they're like, oh, this feels like an interrogation. So and like you'll know this just by being a college uni student. Um, you get on better with some people than you do others. So some
Hmm.
people you just have good chemistry with, some you don't. And with him, we just had good chemistry. We clicked. We bounced off each other. There was laughing, joking, and it was a nice interview to do, and definitely one that I'm very proud of. So yeah, I'd say Brody Lee was the one that surprised me most, and definitely a good way. John Moxley was another. Actually, he didn't surprise me.
Yeah, he seems like just like a really just funny, welcoming guy
He's
in
just
general.
how you'd expect him to be, but
Yeah.
unlike unapologetically just laid back. which I respect. I'm just like, you just don't care, and you know what? Fair play to you. You just
Yeah.
don't care about that, and you know what? Good on you. So those two were definitely interviews that I'm proud of, I'd say.
Yeah, no, they're all fantastic, and obviously I don't need to I don't need to put WrestleTalk over, but I'll put the links in the bio or in the
Appreciate that, man.
description. Um, but yeah, any probably funny moments while interviewing wrestlers? Was there any like run-ins from anybody or any like interesting like stuff that you
So
off
yeah,
screen and stuff?
I've got a story. So I was interviewing. I can't remember who it was. I can't remember. But so before when I used to do them, I wouldn't have like a backdrop. Like we've got these like WrestleTalk backdrops now,
Yeah.
just to make it look more sort of presentable and while we've all like more uniform, so there's not just people's rooms in the background. So before we got them, I was interviewing someone and it was going really well. I could hear my dad like calling up for me.
Mm.
I'm like, okay, like just hope he doesn't come in. Just hope he doesn't come in. And he then pops his head up, like opens the door, pops his head up at my room, and I don't turn around to make eye contact with him, but he takes a look over at my screen. So I sit with the door directly behind me. So he takes a look over at my screen, obviously realizes what he's done, and goes, "Crap," and just legs it. And then was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." When I came out, and I was like, "It's fine. It was a complete accident." So moving on from that, I got a sign on my door that was like interview in progress, do not come in. And just stuck it on my door whenever I was in the middle of doing an interview
That's great.
to make sure people didn't come in. But it's things we've had to adapt to with obviously the current climate we're in, and but everyone working from home and doing like the whole family being at home. It's people understand if stuff like that happens. But any other funny stories?
Yeah, no, that happened to me because in the early stages I had like I on this call even I've had to mute because there's been some background noise. But like and in the early stages I was like very very keen on like putting out a good product. So when someone interrupted, I think I had to edit out me like lambasting someone for like 5 minutes over like interrupting the podcast. So like yeah, it is funny when you get those kind of run-ins. But yeah,
Stuff like that happens there.
but now as you you mentioned your mom and your dad and like the family there. How does your like I've got like my cousin, my uncle sent me a photo yesterday, being like, now you've got my son into wrestling now. I had to buy him a WWE magazine, and they're now €9, which I was very surprised about. But I was
Nine,
yeah, €9, which is about
not cheap.
no, £7.50, I think it might be. But yeah, so I've been blamed for causing a sizable hole in his pocket. But is there any like how does your family like react to like the wrestling stuff or just what you do in general? I'd say they're proud, but like wrestling is such it's that like it's that thing where you go to the family events and they're like, "How's the wrestling?" And you have to kind of like I find it weird sometimes because it is something that's quite niche, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It is niche, as you say. It's different from other hobbies. Whereas if I was covering football, they'd probably be like, "Oh, well, what's going on? What's going on more?" Because I think now they just don't get the wrestling side of it. Definitely, my brother's a wrestling fan, so he'll watch what I do and things like that. But my parents don't really, but they're very supportive, proud of me. Which is awesome to see. They'll be like, "Oh, just as long as you get your grades at uni, we're fine." You mentioned the Quizlemania thing. When I won that, so I was obviously
Oh,
on.
I know the story. It is brilliant.
My parents kept. My mum texted me. She was like, "Oh, you're right, Nugget." So for those that don't know, on the show, it was the week that Retribution debuted. So Adam, who runs the show, gave us all like crappy nicknames, and mine was Nugget, as sort of in honor, I guess, of Retribution. So my mum was calling me. She texted me. She was like, "I love you, Nugget," and I'd not told her about this. So I was like, "Oh God, like how do you know?" And she was like, "Oh, I found it on YouTube." I'm like, "Oh, okay, fantastic."
Vanity searching you.
I think she did, which is quite sweet. And then So I was like, oh god. And then my grandma then came over the next day, and my mum showed my grandma, and it wasn't what I expected it to be, where the whole family's watching this. I'm like, oh, do we really have to do this? But no, they're all very supportive, and definitely recently, once I've started interviewing bigger names that I guess they know, it's been a lot easier because I can be like, oh, I'm interviewing Ric Flair. And they're like, oh, I know him. Or if like my dad said he doesn't watch wrestling, but if we're watching it and he'll know of it, he'll know of the people that are on TV. So I'm like, oh, I'm interviewing the team that were the Revival, and he'll be like, oh, that's awesome because he knows who they are. So stuff like that has been obviously great to see, and I think they sometimes because they're not in the bubble of it, they didn't realize sort of how big WrestleTalk is or things like that. So once you actually sit and explain it to them, they're like, oh, okay, this is something quite serious. Which is just great. But honestly, I couldn't ask for their parents. They're incredibly supportive.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. We like to acknowledge our mistakes on here. The audio cut out, but we're back. Yeah.
We are.
Yeah. So I was just saying that like my dad watches wrestling with me, kind of half on and half off, and it's just I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but it's just quite fun to get that kind of when they're watching it or they watch it in passing or like walk by it and they point out something that's like that like is annoying the wrestling world very obviously, or they just make an observation that just makes you laugh about wrestling. It's just like they're like, this is a bit silly, and they're like, well, what happened this week? Oh, you got hit by a chair, and it's like that's a bit stupid. It's like, yeah, it kind of is. It's those little things that like you get when you talk wrestling with a non-wrestling fan.
Yeah, there are some instances where if I'm watching something, I'm like, I hope no one walks in now
Yeah.
because this isn't great. It either is it's just something that I shouldn't be watching. So yeah, but I mean my mum I mean could wrestling. And to be fair, neither could my dad really. It's more they watch it if it's on the TV and they're sort of in passing, they'll give it a little watch or just like glance over at what's happening, but they don't really care. Which sort of is good and bad because it's
Yeah.
quite nice them being detached from the world. So sort of me and my brother have got our own thing. Um, but yeah, sometimes I guess would it be nice if they knew exactly what I was talking about? Yes, but it's not a massive deal to me.
But sometimes you can get that kind of they can be the kind of you don't want to be 24/7 wrestling, so it's a nice disconnect, and you can talk to them
Yeah,
about something else.
exactly.
But yeah, getting a bit philosophical here. But what do you think makes a good interview? Uh,
Ooh,
it's
what
such a
do I
broad
think?
it's such a broad question, but like,
Yeah, you put me on the spot there. What do I think makes a good interview?
what do you try and like check off when you're like um when you're when you're interviewing
So
someone?
I hear a lot from different people. Some people say that they. So for me, a good interview is just it's like a conversation with two friends where a camera happens to be there. And it's just easy, light-hearted. The conversation flows, and it's something that people want to watch. And not only that, it's an interview that the people being interviewed want to be part of because you get so many interviews nowadays where, and the people that I've even spoken to that have been interviewed that are just like, we get asked the same questions 50 times a day. Who's your favorite wrestler? Who trained you?
How did
Talk
you
us
get
through your
started?
first,
Yeah,
that kind of thing. And it's like they get asked these things whenever they do an interview. So I like to ask them different things. If I've got a tag team show, which I've had before. I've had Santana and Ortiz, the Good Brothers, FTR. So sort of I've had the best tag teams in the world on the show. Whenever I interview them, I'm like, right, we're gonna do a bit of like sort of I guess couples therapy. So you're gonna describe your tag team partner in a sentence, and they're gonna do the same
yeah, I like that.
and stuff like that works well because it's different. It's like And I've seen something that I know Alicia Atoot does it. She asked them if they're ordering food at a restaurant, what would the other person order? And stuff like that is awesome. Where it's like it's interactive, it's fun, it's lighthearted, it's nothing too serious, but you still get a good time out of it. And I think a lot of people go into interviews being like, right, what's my scoop gonna be? What are they gonna give me? And it's just
And then
like
they try too hard for it. Yeah.
exactly. And it's like if you try too hard for it, they're gonna know.
Hmm.
And then they're just going to be like, right, I'm not going to give this person anything. If you just have a light-hearted conversation with someone, they're more likely to sort of trust you with information. And it's not that I do this to get information out of people, because to be honest, like, yes, that's important, but it's not the be all and end all. So I sort of do try and just make the person I'm interviewing feel as comfortable as possible, and think, right, if I was interviewing, if I was being interviewed, how would I like to be treated, and try and treat them in the same manner, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, because like the best podcasts, like yours, I see it in yours where it's like you're, as you were saying, the conversational where you could feel like you're in the room. Just to throw out a few, like the Jack May podcast on YouTube or the True Geordie podcast, things
Yeah.
like that. You feel like you're in the room and you're just having a laugh. You could put it on the TV and have a beer and like feel like you're in the room, and that's what makes it really good. And then you obviously translate that into the wrestling interviews, and yourself and Alex McCarthy and all them are fantastic at doing that. And here's a speaking of, I'd like to think this is a question I ask a lot of the guests. If you had to pick one match to get a friend into wrestling, what would you pick? Or even like as we're talking about family who don't watch wrestling, if you had to like, it's not like best match, but if you had to tell someone, I'm going to make you a wrestling fan at the end of the night, what match would you stick on?
Oh, that's a difficult one. That's actually a question I ask people, and I've never been able to answer one for myself. But I think what I'd do is, do you remember SummerSlam 2017? That four-way between Samoa Joe,
Oh yeah,
2017. The Samoa Joe, Braun Strowman,
Lesnar.
Reigns.
Yeah,
That for me is an awesome match and
just
really goes under the radar.
yeah,
Um,
just batshit mental stuff like just from pillar to post. Just
Yeah,
and
so I think I'd show them that, to be honest, because it's an easy story to get into, because there isn't really one. It's just we're big guys and we're gonna beat the crap out of each other.
yeah,
Um,
I showed him Samoa Joe. Like Samoa Joe is just fantastic at kind of, if you're talking about like hybrid between like legitimate fighting and like getting someone into wrestling, like Joe and Kabashi. Obviously, the anniversary
yeah,
of that was a few days ago. Just watch that. If you watch people slapping the shit out of each other, that's gonna be entertaining. Like, but
yeah,
yeah,
you got
no,
a point there.
yeah, no, but and another one is like a Survivor Series team. I was gonna say Survivor Series team of current wrestlers, any company. We could go in the direction of Survivor Series team of people you've interviewed, but I think we broaden it out. So Survivor Series team of current TV wrestlers.
Okay, okay, right. So Survivor Series team of current wrestlers.
I've got Alex McCarthy on later, so I'm gonna ask him as well. So we'll see what the teams look like at the end of the day.
Yeah, all right. I'd go Brock Lesnar
Safe pick.
because no, but I mean even more than that, Brock Lesnar is legitimately one of my favorite wrestlers.
Yeah.
I think he's so underrated, and that's saying something.
Mm.
People are, oh, he has the same style of match. When he sells like a madman.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I'd go,
Balor and Bryan matches are fantastic.
yeah. So on that note, Daniel Bryan. So Brock Lesnar, Daniel Bryan, AJ Styles,
Mm-hmm.
Minoru Suzuki,
Jesus fucking Christ.
and Kenny Omega. That'd be my five.
Alex has his work cut out later. Jesus.
I think he does.
All right, I'm gonna write them down. And so we've got Kenny, we've got Brian, we've got Suzuki. Oh, this poor whoever's fighting these guys. Jesus. Have you been watching much of the G1? Have you been enjoying the G1?
To be honest, I mean, with the amount of time I have in the day, I don't tend to watch that much New Japan. But I mean, so we do G1 coverage over on our second channel, Wrestle 2.
Oh yeah.
And I've done some of that. I've done some of the live reactions, and I'll often say to the guy that does it, he's Tempest, great guy, who runs the New Japan coverage. I'll say to him like, "Hey, any matches worth checking out? And he's often like, yeah, check out these 12. And I'm like, don't really have time to watch 12. But yeah, I do catch what I can. I keep up to date with the rankings, and I tend to I'll just watch it on the background. I don't sit down and watch it like I do episodes of Raw, SmackDown. But if I'm like cooking dinner or something or making lunch, I'll often just be like, all right, what can I watch in the background? And I'll watch them.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm not like a full-on New Japan fan, but I'm really enjoying Jay White. I'm surprisingly enjoying Jay White, but he's quite surprised me on it. He's my tip to probably win it, but I'm hoping I finally get a prediction right, because I'm losing prediction contest like mad at the moment. I'd say this is something you probably thought about a lot. Your dream interview.
So I'm going to give you a completely unrealistic one, which is Vince McMahon. But I mean, even half an hour, Vince McMahon wouldn't be enough. I feel like I could interview him for 6 weeks and still not get to ask everything I've wanted to ask. He is possibly the most interesting figure in wrestling. Period. He is just incredibly entertaining. He's whatever people say about him, especially through the latter years. He has transformed wrestling. And he is a genius in my mind. So I'd definitely be one to want to interview him. But other than him, someone more realistic, because I don't think I'm ever going to get the chance to interview him. Who would I like? Tony Khan, I think. I'd like to.
I think that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, he's done it before.
Yeah.
And people say we look alike, so we'll give it a go. But no, I think he'd be great to interview just to get the perspective of what it's like to go head to head with WWE. Someone like what's it like to even put on a major wrestling show, and how that would be. So no, I definitely say that Vince would be top, but I'd probably say Tony Khan would be second.
Yeah, you could ask him to shoot on Jamie Carragher. That'd be amazing.
I would. I saw that the other day. It did make me laugh.
Jurgen Klopp versus Roy Keane, and Tony Khan versus Jamie Carragher for the next AEW pay-per-view.
I'm down to see that.
Yeah, another match would probably be you and Tony against Alex McCarthy and Dominic Mysterio or Walter. But...
I'll take that. I'll take our chances.
Yeah, but yeah, where are we now? What do you, before you just finish up, because I think we're about 25 minutes away from you starting work. Where do you see yourself a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line in terms of what I'm assuming you've set goals, and I was wondering how you said Vince. So obviously you're aiming high. So I was wondering what your plans for the future are, or what your aspirations are.
It's a difficult one because I don't ever try to set too many goals, because I don't know. It's nice to have like a vague, this is what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me works well. Like just being like, all right, by this time next year, I want to have done over 50 interviews a year or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or things like that. But I don't try to set specific goals, because with this wrestling thing, it's so hard to like keep goals. I mean, if you said to me like a year ago I would have had the chance to interview Ric Flair, I would have called you crazy. That wouldn't have even been a goal of mine. So I guess for me, I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. The main thing, obviously, for me this year is going to be finishing university and getting sort of the degree I need and the qualifications I need to set me up in good stead. And then once it's just solely doing this for me, we'll be able to have sort of more clear and defined goals and what I want to achieve. Because for now, it's obviously work is the priority. Work and university are the priority. So once I'm quite excited for once it's just wrestling media, and I can really hit the ground running and be like, right, I'm here to sort of like try and make a name for myself now.
Yeah, and we'll end on a lovely question here that I thought of just before the interview. There's a battle royal set up between you and all the WrestleTalk hosts. So Laurie, Pete, Andy, Luke, everybody. I must throw Sean Ross Sapp in there. Do you back yourself in a battle royal against them, or who do you think would win that?
So I
Colossal
would
tussle.
have backed myself until you threw Sean in, because I think Sean has got some wrestling training.
Oh, he does, doesn't he? Plus, he's just he always find honestly, Sean has been clips of Sean on WrestleTalk have been getting me through lockdown. He's honestly
He is a very entertaining guy
oh
and
my
a
god,
great guy at that.
yeah.
So
But
I
yeah,
probably back Sean to win. But other than that, out of the WrestleTalk guys, I think Laurie seems like quite a fit guy. So I think he'd do quite well for himself.
yeah,
So I think Laurie would probably win.
yeah. The fuck that fuck battle royal. Or that'll be. But that is wrapped up our interview. I'm out of questions and we're nearly out of time. And it's just been an absolute pleasure. Louis, thank you very much for coming on. I'm a big fan of your work, and to get to interview you has been a big pleasure this morning. Yeah, I don't need. Yeah, you don't need this, but you can plug everything you've got away here to our beautiful listeners here who don't.
Oh no, I really appreciate you saying that more than anything. It means a lot for people to be fans of my work. So for you to say that is crazy, and you're doing great stuff as well. I mean, this interview was great. So just keep doing what you're doing, and you'll be fine in no time. You'll be interviewing some of the top names in wrestling. So don't you worry about that.
That means a lot. Tell us where we can find you on the Twitter and where all the WrestleTalk channels, because they have been brilliant during lockdown. Quizomania, the lot, and all the interviews. So you can plug that away right now.
No, I appreciate that. So at the Louis Dangoor on Twitter, that's where I am, and then all the interviews go up onto the Wrestle2 channel. So if you want to check them out, do that. But I mean, if you follow me on Twitter, that's where I post all the news I break, all of the interviews and things like that. In terms of WrestleTalk, WrestleTalk_TV on Twitter is where you can keep up to date with everything WrestleTalk. And then obviously Quizlemania every 2 weeks on Parts of Unknown's YouTube channel, where the next time there's a Quizlemania, I'll be defending my title.
Oh, yes. I can't wait for that. And for just Hallway Graphs Pod on Twitter for us, we have merch somehow. tpublic.com/Hallway Wrestling Podcast. There's literally, you can buy a baby grow with my face on it, which is frightening. But yeah, just go and check our stuff out. We got some interviews coming up. Obviously, Louis coming out in the next few weeks. How can I forget we're on Project Dits as well. We're on that network every Sunday. So go check that out. Louis' interview will probably be coming out next Sunday. Alex McCarthy's coming up soon, and I have fired out a lot of emails, so hopefully I get some replies soon. So yeah, it's been a pleasure, and thank you, Louis, for coming on. And as we say at the end of every episode of the Hallway Wrestling Podcast, fuck that fuck, and subscribe to WrestleTalk.